Yo, what's going on guys, Arekkz here, welcome back to another Division video. It is that time of the week again, the vendors have reset, which means I'm back to tell you guys what is for sale, and of those items, whether any of those are worth purchasing. However, it's really good this week because now that 1.4 has dropped, a lot of the vendors, in fact, pretty much all the vendors have something you will be interested in. If you guys cast your mind back to, say, the 1.3 vendor reset videos, then yes, let's be honest, they weren't that exciting because a lot of the items were either not particularly great or because we knew 1.4 was coming, I kind of recommended not getting them. But this week, oh my gosh, there's a lot of stuff to talk about, so let's not waste any time. And as always, I'm going to start in the dark zone. Of course, if you guys do enjoy this, like to be super appreciated. Comment down below if you have any questions, but let's get started. It's also worth mentioning, just a quick note, maybe you guys have been sort of like leveling up new characters, or maybe some people have kind of forgotten. If you are in the wrong world tier, you will not see relevant gear score items. So you can see everything here is 163, but if you then go to your map and you change your world tier to world tier 4, provided of course you have the right gear score for it, then once you return to your vendor, everything will be 229. So this is important because otherwise if you jump in, you're like, wait, why am I seeing everything that's rubbish? That is the answer. So in DZ02, of course, this is where you get your gear pieces. This week, everything is 229. You have a Spec Ops mask, an operator vest, an operator pack, tactical knee pads, Spec Ops holster, and operator gloves. There aren't sort of like your usual candidates here, so we don't necessarily have, say, like a Reckless chest piece or a Savage gloves. But the thing with gear, and this is going to apply across the board throughout this vendor reset video, is you are going to have to kind of like tailor it to your build, because I can't necessarily tell you what is great all the time for gear pieces because I don't necessarily know what kind of build you're speccing towards. So pay attention to all the buffs down here, pay attention to all the attributes, should I say, and then see if they're relevant to what you want, and of course you can kind of go from there. But this is what is on sale this week, so at least they are gear score relevant, so high ends are now on par with gear set pieces. So if you want any of these, if they're relevant, maybe you're running a build with like 4 gear pieces and you want to kind of like supplement that with, say, 2 high ends, it's up to you, but do consider checking these out. Then if we jump over to DZ03, this time, this is of course where we go to get your weapons. Once again, 229 across the board. So we have an Officer's M9A1 with Expert and Adept. If you need a sidearm to fill a gap, fair enough, but that one is not especially great. We have the Tactical Vector 45 ACP. Now Vectors are not that great in 1.4. They did take a hit. So generally speaking, if you're ever going to get a Vector, you're going to get it to, say, run it in like an Alpha Bridge build and just use it for the talents. This one has Ferocious, Meticulous, and Commanding, so not actually a great set of talents, so this one you can actually just skip over. Classic AK-47, not as great as the Black Market variant, so skipping over that. We have a Black Market SASG-12S with Fierce, Dominant, and Unforgiving, so Fierce is of course a nice talent, the other two not particularly great for now. So skipping over there to the Surplus SVD. SVDs are one of the best marksman rifle categories in 1.4, so if you're looking for a strong marksman rifle, this is a good category to kind of go towards. This one has Fierce, again, nice talent. Unforgiving, not really one that I'm especially a fan of, but you can always roll that out. And you have Discipline, which is the one that default rolls on these weapons. So again, not an amazing set of talents, but just do bear in mind for future reference, if you're wondering what is the strong marksman rifle class, SVDs are one of those. You also have a military L86 LSW. This one has Swift, Fierce, and Predatory. Again, interesting set, but the L86 is not the strongest LMG. Ideally, if you're going to go towards LMGs, then everyone's raving about the Hungry Hog right now, but if you're talking about non-named variants, then the M60 is probably one of your strongest, so for the time being, going to skip over that one. After that, we have DZ04. Now, this is, of course, where you go to get your mods, and do bear in mind that mods now, if you're in the top of the world tier, are level 33, or item level 33, so you can see down there right at the bottom, which means these are going to have greater potential, stat potential. So if you do have, say you come over from 1.3 and you're stuck with level 32 mods, it is going to be worth your time to start upgrading. It's not necessarily top of the priority list, so if you're working towards some new weapons, some new gear, fair enough, but do bear in mind it is going to be worth your time replacing these. Eventually, you have a prototype firearms mod with armor on it, and you also have a prototype performance mod. Remember, the performance mods are also very good now. They have dedicated slots that go in your backpack, your holster, and your knee pads, if I remember correctly, and they are separate to normal gear mods, so it's now definitely in your interest to get both. This performance gear mod, of course, benefits sticky bombs, so look at the skills you're using and try and work out what you're going from there. So, for example, I'm going towards a Firecrest turret build, so I would look for performance gear mods with turret skills. So, for the time being, those are your options. Then after that, DZ05, of course, this is for weapon mods. Same sentiment as DZ04. These are now level 33, so in that respect, they are again going to be worth your time to upgrade. The heavy magazine spring carries critical hit damage, critical hit chance, and rate of fire. Compensator you have here with stability, optimal range, and critical hit damage. We have an angle grip with stability, reload speed, and critical damage, and an MK5 scope. So they are your weapon mods. And then for the first time in a very long time, it's actually worth speaking about DZ06 because once again, there are 229 options here. Yesterday there was a really, really nice Banshee bag actually, but sadly I wasn't high enough level to grab it. But either way, you have a Reclaimer ventilator here, Firecrest vest, a Striker backpack, you have a Lone Star knee pads, Hunter's Faith holster, and Dead Eye gloves. Now pay attention again, as I mentioned with the gear. So for example, the Firecrest vest has health on kill, which is a really, really strong skill this time around. If you guys haven't run, say, Nomad with health on kill, it is very, very strong. I'm actually working towards a Firecrest build, so that is of particular interest to me. But again, look at your build, look at the major attributes, and see if they will benefit you, and then of course you can decide from there. Then with the Dark Zone done, back in the base operations, believe it or not, there are actually some more vendors worth considering now. Again, with the whole kind of world tier system and, you know, controlling the global level, the global kind of like difficulty, it also affects the loot that people have, meaning that vendors like this that were previously useless, again, have useful things here. So you can see 229 across the board. This custom M44 has some pretty nice skills. It has Destructive and it has Cool-Headed. Now do bear in mind, Cool-Headed is a nice skill. It was taken off Caduceus. Very sadly, you now won't get that on assault rifles at all, but still a very nice skill to have. Destructive, you would just simply roll out commanding in this one, and that is actually a pretty nice talent, so do consider that one. There's, of course, Spec Ops Mask, Prototype Performance Mod, this time for Smart Cover Duration, a Grip, and, of course, you know, your usual caches. So, do consider that guy there. Then, running from him to the Advanced Weaponry vendor, this guy also has good stuff. He has, of course, you know, some of the name weapons. Pakan is particularly strong now because the RPK-74, which is the base model of it, is a very strong weapon. You, of course, have the Cassidy, the Centurion, PX-4 Storm Type T, a PP-19, which is still a very strong PvE SMG, so if you are looking for PvE, then this is a very strong weapon. As for the skills, they're not especially great in this situation, so just bear in mind PP-19 for future, but you can kind of skip over that. LVOAC, this week it is not that great. The one that was running last week, I managed to grab it yesterday with probably about half an hour to spare, was especially strong. The LVOAC is a very strong assault rifle in PvP, does a lot of burst damage, so if you do get a chance to get well with some decent rolls on, do consider grabbing it. So you have a tactical Super 90, which is also, Super 90s are, you know, high damage shotguns in 1.4, classic M44 carbine, and a military M60. Now I mentioned this earlier, the M60 being one of the strongest LMGs right now. This one also has some decent skills. You have Meticulous, Capable, and Brutal. Brutal is very nice. Of course, you would roll out Capable in this situation, but if you are looking for an LMG, this is actually a very good one to consider. So if you do have the money, maybe it's worth your time. As for the mods, you have a quick release magazine, the suppressor, small red grip, and a CQB-SS scope. So of course, for that one, check your weapons, see what you're after, all that good stuff. Then moving down from there to the special equipment vendor, do bear in mind that this is now where you go to get all your stuff. The equipment vendor that used to be at the top of the base of operations is now gone. It's just, there's like an empty space where it used to be. So now it is all down here. It's kind of consolidated. So you have the Liberator here, the Valkyria, Historian. We have a first wave P45 with Expert and Providence. Not especially exciting. Tactical Vector 45 ACP. Now this one, I mentioned earlier, the Tactical Vector. This one has nice skills. You have Brutal, Fierce, and Adept. Now, Brutal and Fierce, very nice skills. Adept, less so, but because it's in the free slot and you roll it out, that could actually be a really good option. Now again, I wouldn't run the Vector 45 ACP as your main weapon, but if you're running Alpha Bridge with dual SMGs, then this is a very good weapon to have, because of course you could then get some other skills on your primary. That being said, I'm not especially a fan of running two sets of 229 weapons, so what I would recommend in this situation, if we back up from here, and you go to your world tier system, what you can actually do is change your world tier down to, say, world tier 1, and speak to this guy again, and you'll then see that he's selling a 163 version. So what you can actually do is grab this for considerably less Phoenix credits, which still has Brutal, still has Fierce, and still has Adept. You'll notice how the unlock requirements are considerably lower, so you could then grab this one, run something with, say, like a PP-19 if you're in PvE, or an MP5 if you are in PvP, and that would be your 229 option. You could then have some really strong skills through Alpha Bridge, and then, yeah, you have a really nice recipe for some good stuff. So do consider that. Do make use of the world tier system, because sometimes it does actually benefit you to have lower gear score items. So, you know, don't forget that you can jump around, and of course that way you can effectively influence and control the levels of the items that are sold. But if we then return to him again, below that you have a military SA-58. I actually really like this assault rifle. Dominant, self-preserved, and meticulous. Not particularly great on the skills. Double barrel shotguns I'm not a massive fan of. Police MK17 is very strong. This is actually a strong marksman rifle type. Again, another category that we used to heavily overlook pre 1.4, so this time around it's actually not too bad. Skill-wise, you've got Brutal, you've got Dominant, and you've got Prepared, so you would probably roll out Dominant, which is in the free slot, and that weapon would not be too bad. Again, we have another military M60 as well, so this one has Adept, Brutal, and Capable. So in this situation, again, I would roll out Capable. Besides that, again, you have all the gear pieces down here, lots of 229 options, so based on your build, consider picking things up. He has a lot of pieces down here, so if there's something you're looking for, then do consider grabbing them. Of course, they're all Phoenix credits, so you're probably going to have to do some farming because things are not cheap these days, but either way, those are your options. As for this guy over here, you know, he has the usual stuff. He has a load of different mods, loads of different blueprints. For the most part, I'm just going to recommend you scroll through here and see if there's anything you want, but do bear in mind, again, stamina gear mods, firearms gear mods, all those kind of things like that. Very, very important. MP5 ST. The MP5 is, don't forget, a strong SMG in PvP. So do consider looking out for that if you get the option. But aside from that, lots and lots of options down here. And then finally, running down to the underground, speaking to this chap here. This week we have a G36 Enhanced as your 229 option that has determined, responsive, and focused. Not especially great, and given that you have to be underground rank 40, I'm going to kind of suggest you skip over that one. We have a 204 X45, military G36, and a G36 Enhanced. For the most part, I skip over the lower gear score ones unless they are especially good in Alpha Bridge combos, but down below that there are a couple of decent blueprints, so Banshee knee pads if you're running for a Banshee set, Firecrest knee pads, I'm especially looking out for these ones. So again, a few options down there. Now for the most part, that is pretty much it. I do say for the most part because if you go to your map, as mentioned with the world tier system, you can actually even go as far as to say visit all the different safe houses, and they will give you, there are some options, not necessarily all the items because there are a lot of purple items there, but they do typically have 1 or 2 items that are of gear score 229, sometimes mods, sometimes gear mods, weapon mods, etc. So if you do have the time, it's worth jumping around and having a look at some of those. And of course, that same principle applies to all of the checkpoints as well. So there are actually a lot of vendors that are worth speaking to this time around. But for the time being, let's try and keep these videos as focused as possible because it's already longer than I anticipated. Those are the vendors you should definitely consider. So new vendors in the base of operations, the kind of 2 that you used to overlook, now do consider them on a weekly basis. And of course, all the other ones from there. So hopefully this has been helpful for you guys. If you have any questions, by all means, drop them down below. This is probably going to be the format that I do this video in from now on. I used to kind of do the whole sort of text on screen, but there's just so much stuff now that I think it's probably more useful to you guys to actually see the vendors physically on screen, so you know where they are, what they have, and of course all the subtle things that I might not necessarily mention in the voiceover. But anyway, thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, like would be super appreciated. Comment down below again if you have any questions, and take it easy. Catch you next time. Peace out.